Welcome back. You're watching To The Point and a special one-hour discussion on the situation in Iraq. We turn now to what exactly could happen in Iraq itself as this crisis develops. Talmiz Ahmed, writing recently in the Financial Times, Ahmed Rashid, who's an expert on this part of the world, says that ISIL has issued an audio statement threatening Shia shrines at Karbala and Najaf. And he adds that if these were to be attacked, almost certainly Shia-Sunni sectarian warfare would break out all over the entire Muslim world. Do you share that terrible predicament?
Firstly, it is true that they have been issuing a number of statements that are extremely virulent and extremely hostile to the Shia. They have used some of the most obnoxious language that is possible. But let us also admit the fact that these are not monolithic entities. It's not that you have just two groups in the country, one called Shia and the other called Sunni. As you know, within the ISIS itself, there is a whole variety of people who have come together on a certain platform. Also do recall that there are Sunni elements who have been supporting the Maliki government, and there are Shia elements who are not supporting the government. I do not foresee a kind of conflagration that would bring together that would put Sunni and Shia at war with each other. Okay. Also, there is a certain act of bravado to say, I will destroy Karbala and I will destroy Najaf. They have used some very obnoxious language about these two shrines, calling them polytheists and things like that. These are not acceptable, and I don't think the vast opinion in this region would be supportive of such language.
I've heard very clearly what Mr. Ahmed has said, but if despite that Karbala and Najaf were to be attacked by ISIS, what would be the ramifications for us here in India? After all, we have allegedly a Shia population of 50 million, which is said to be 30% of the Muslim population of the country. It's also said that we have perhaps the second largest Shia population outside Iran. What would be the ramifications here in India if that attack on Karbala and Najaf were to happen?
Two things. One, if there was such an attack, there would definitely be an escalation within the region itself. Number two, these wars are already a Shia-Sunni confrontation. There is a polarization that is occurring across West Asia. Shia nations, Iran in particular, are supporting Shia elements who are radicalized Shia elements. Other Sunni West Asian nations are already supporting ISIL and other radicalized Sunni groupings. So there is a very strong Shia-Sunni confrontation developing over here, and it is mixed in with geopolitics of West Asia. What does that do to India? I think astonishingly, and I think happily, the Indian Muslim has always resisted all these trends all around us. At a point of time when such tremendous radicalization has occurred in Pakistan, right next to us, we find that apart from extreme fringe of fringe elements, the Indian Muslim has remained completely indifferent and has in fact progressively turned against Pakistan.
Would he be indifferent on an attack on Najaf and Karbala?
I think he would realize that he is not required to respond to this, though he will be deeply injured and hurt by it.
KC Singh, you've been ambassador in Iran. Iran is a Shia country. Iran is a critical neighbor of Iraq. How would the Iranians view the prospect, the possibility, or again, whatever verb you want to use, of the threat that ISIS might attack Karbala and Najaf, two of the most holy shrines for them?
Well, the Iranians have said at the highest level that they will not let it happen. So that is actually what we are seeing in Iraq cannot be seen in isolation. This is a Shia-Sunni battle which started in Syria and which has come back to Iraq, because Maliki here has been siding with Iran, allowing Iranian help to go to Assad in Syria, and Assad had gained some kind of a temporary upper hand over salient Sunni groups. And Saudi Arabia and Qatar, trying to spite the Iranians, have fed those groups, and those groups have now come here, mutated, and become much larger and much stronger. Now, this is exactly the kind of thing we saw in Afghanistan, how Taliban was created. It comes out of your enmity between Soviet Union and US, and you end up creating a monster. So I think the Saudis and the Qataris may have done it. I don't at all agree with this, that this is a local phenomena.
No, but what about my point about Iran? And do you think Iran will intervene decisively?
Yeah. Iran is being forced to intervene, and US does not want it. Because US realizes if the Iranians come in strongly and directly, then the Sunni heartland is gone, then you cannot, then Iraq is partitioned. At the moment, if you change the prime minister, which is what is being attempted, you get a prime minister who becomes inclusive, brings Sunnis in, the Kurds in. That is the only opportunity to roll ISIS back and isolate it. But at the moment, it has fed into the Sunni angst.
Okay.
And the anger they have at being discriminated against by Maliki over the last few years, when everybody ignored it. And the Iranians were very happy because they were using him as a rubber stamp.
Okay. Naresh Gujral, there's another aspect of ISIS illustrated and highlighted today by the Times of India. The paper says that a recently released map by ISIS shows parts of northwest India, including Gujarat, as part of the Islamic State of Khorasan, which is a caliphate that ISIS wants to create. How seriously does your government take that map and the potential implied threat to India?
No, I don't think that has any serious implications for us. And that is why our government is not reacting to it. But what my friend Casey said earlier, you know, there is cause for concern, because if this escalates, we have more than 30,000 Indians in Iraq alone. And also the adjoining areas, the numbers would be in lakhs. We don't want a situation like we had when Iraq invaded Kuwait and lakhs of Indians had to be airlifted from there. I worry about a situation like that.
Do we have plans in readiness in case that denouement were to actually happen? Is your government ready and prepared for it?
I'm certain that they have, they are working on some kind of a emergency plan. But as I said, one hopes that it doesn't escalate into such a huge thing, because that would have huge ramifications, not only for our workers who are trapped there, but also the economy of India.
Now, Praveen Swami, could ISIS's success, and many would already believe ISIS is astonishingly successful, lead to terrorist groups and militant groups in India drawing inspiration and becoming bolder? Do you foresee that there could be some sort of inspirational impact on the terror situation we face domestically in our country?
I think some violent Islamist groups will take heart from what ISIS has achieved. Remember, just a few thousand fighters have succeeded in terrorizing 3 divisions of a conventional army into apparently collapsing. The Afghan jihad in the 1970s fired the imagination of an earlier generation of jihadists. The Taliban's successes in Afghanistan did that, and this will likely have some inspiring impact on several others. Having said that, I think there are a couple of reasons we should hesitate from drawing excessively large conclusions. The first is that Iraq, for all its communal divisions, its Shia-Sunni conflagration, I agree with Talmiz Ahmad, is a remarkably resilient society. Baghdad is home to a diverse range of communities, not just Shia and Sunni, but Turkmen, Yazdi, a large number of other people, Christians, and it hasn't had a communal riot, and that's something that we in India should probably see something to emulate in. The second is that ISIS's successes have come about in very peculiar circumstances, which is the communalization of the Iraqi army, the sapping of its backbone, poor leadership, political demoralization, and ISIS will find it very hard to replicate its successes as it tries to push south and push east. I don't think these overwhelming successes will be repeated anytime soon. What I think India should be really worrying about is the prospect, though, that a long war in the Middle East will damage our energy security, and that too when the United States is less and less inclined to commit troops and commit money to shoring up the stability of that area.
Talmiz Ahmad, I want to, in the very limited time left for us before we end, go back to the Iraq situation and the government's attempts to try and regain territory it's lost. Clearly, on its own, the Nouri al-Maliki government is not going to be capable of sweeping back ISIS. But they're not getting any immediate response from America when they requested airstrikes. Is Obama simply taking his time, or do you think he's likely to refuse? And if Obama doesn't hurry, how much worse could the situation become for Prime Minister Maliki?
First, let us be very clear that the present situation is a direct product of US intervention in 2003 and the systematic destruction of Iraqi institutions. Now we are living with the consequence of that. They had come in and said that they have come to empower the Shia. So they had a very clear sectarian agenda right at the commencement of their intervention. Maliki is a product of that schema. And therefore, we are living with the consequences of his extremely narrow, very exclusivist approach. And he has systematically alienated large sections of the country, indeed large sections of the Shia as well. I'm not sure about what the Americans are up to. My own understanding is that the United States does not wish to engage militarily in any part of West Asia. And I think that is a very welcome policy. They have nothing positive to offer this region.
Okay.
Ultimately, Iraq has to solve the problem itself. We are waiting for a kind of national government which would bring together all these elements. But it would mean the exclusion of Nouri al-Maliki from that scenario.
Okay.
I also don't think the Iranians want to intervene just yet because they know that it will upset the apple cart.
Okay.
They want to actually have a region that is at peace with itself. They want to engage with the Saudis. I don't think they will intervene robustly. I also would not disparage the Iraqi forces just yet.
Okay.
You see, there was no fighting. There is no fighting so far. And therefore, there is a regrouping taking place. Yes, it is a debilitated army, but it is an army that will give a good account of itself. After all, how many ISIS elements are there?
Let me stop you there, we're running out of time. I want to bring in a couple of other people. Very quickly, if Talmiz Ahmed is right in saying that Iraq has to sort it out itself, then will that sorting out actually end up being a partition of the country into a Sunni, a Shia and a Kurd zone?
You see, when you speak of sort it out by itself, what do you mean? As I see it, if the ISIL continues on the pathways that it has adopted, unless it is militarily neutralized as a force, no rational, this polarization will only deepen.
But Maliki can't militarily neutralize them as things stand at the moment. He hasn't got the capacity.
We are speaking of the possibilities of external intervention. We are talking about America coming back, and while America's shadow in Iraq has been tremendously destructive in history, a targeted sort of strike against the ISIS forces would, I think, at this juncture result in a very, very positive outcome.
Very quickly to you first, K.C. Singh, and then Naresh Gujral. Do you think the situation in Iraq is going to deteriorate substantially before we see signs of any small improvement? A quick answer, K.C. Singh, because we're horribly out of time.
No, two quick points. One is that ISIS under the leadership of al-Baghdadi is outshadowing the Al-Qaeda leadership. So Al-Qaeda is at the moment, that's why they've ramped up Kashmir.
Okay, and the
recently
second point,
they're talking of Kashmir,
the
they're
second
looking for a
point,
new
because we're out of
theater.
time.
Second point is US will come in, they will come in via an aerial attack, but after they have made sure that the Iranians come in on their terms and not beyond that, and Maliki is gone. They are negotiating at the moment terms of engagement with both the Iraqi government and the Iranian partial engagement, not coming in wholesale. Once that happens, that's why the Iranians today
I'm going to have to stop you.
The nuclear thing with the Americans.
I'm going to have to stop you, K.C. Singh. I want Naresh Gujral to have a quick word before we end the show. Would you accept, Naresh Gujral, that very, very early in the career of this government, you face a very serious test, and how this test goes and how you handle it could determine how the country views you hereafter? A quick answer.
Well, Karan, it's not how we handle it. It's out of our control. But yes, if things were to get out of control there, this would adversely impact India. Not only because we have millions of our workers in that area, but also the prices of oil will go through the roof.
Absolutely, and that's a particular issue we didn't go into because it's almost a different chapter on itself, but clearly it is something that worries Finance Minister Jaitley enormously, and it's something that worries every Indian because the price of oil affects inflation in this country. My thanks to all 5 of my guests for joining me. My thanks also to Shashi Tharoor, who had to leave us early. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.